Hey, this one's on expensive mistakes.
Nobody's perfect, and human error is almost inevitable. But some monumental screw-ups can end up costing shed loads of cash. Here are some of the most expensive mistakes in history, which should make you feel slightly better about your own slip-ups.
Shed loads. We'll see.
Number 10. Songtsu Bridge Collapse. The Songtsu Bridge over the Han River links two South Korean districts and is one of Seoul's most popular commuter routes. But the 3,805-foot structure was struck by disaster on the morning of October 21, 1994. The bridge struggled under the weight of the hundreds of people on their way to work in the early morning rush, and at around 7:40 a.m., a 157-foot central chunk collapsed 65 feet into the river below, along with cars, minibuses, and a fully loaded bus. 32 people lost their lives, while 17 more were injured. An investigation was launched into the freak accident. The bridge had already received complaints about unstable foundations, which caused an unsteady swinging sensation, and the root cause was identified as a construction failure. Reports noted that the steel trestle joints supporting the central suspension had been welded with an incorrect thickness of 8 millimeters rather than 10 millimeters, causing crucial connecting pins to break under the immense pressure. Although the bridge was designed to withstand a maximum 36.3-ton weight per car, vehicles weighing 47.3 tons were also using the bridge to commute. These combined factors cost the State Council $185,000 in compensation to the victims, while a complete rebuild set them back the equivalent of an extra $2 million, making this one costly human error. Number 9.
$185,000 in compensation to the victims isn't even that much, all things considered. How many people died, how many living victims there were, and it was due to pure negligence? I would have expected something in the multi-million dollar range. I also have zero idea how the justice system in South Korea plays out. So, on a side note, have you ever seen the show Suits? It's not exactly realistic, but they do corporate law. I used to be really into law shows for a second there. What's another one? Law and Order. I don't like the crime aspect of it, but the law really is curious. That one's produced by Dick Wolf. That show's been on my whole life. Literally.
Deadly Skyscrapers. In spring 2014, London welcomed an ambitious new skyscraper to its financial district. The 525-foot tall reflective building became known as the Walkie-Talkie due to its distinct curved design. But this shiny new tower was hiding a sinister secret. As summer came around, citizens of London began complaining that the building's south-facing concave surface was causing powerful rays of sunlight at certain points in the day, which could raise the temperature to an unheard of 70 degrees Celsius. The highly concentrated beam was capable of melting tiles, causing a small fire on the doormat of a barbershop and melting a Jaguar XJ belonging to a local businessman.
That is such a design flaw.
While one journalist even attempted to fry an egg in the extreme heat. The newly nicknamed Walkie Scorchy had to be stopped, so a permanent sunshade known as a brise soleil was attached to the building between the 3rd and 34th floors over the course of 6 months, costing over $12 million. A hard pill to swallow considering the building already cost over $250 million to build. Ironically, the architect Raphael Vanoli also designed the Vidara Hotel in Las Vegas, which suffered a similar problem as it singed sunbathers, earning it the nickname the Death Ray. Vanoli confessed that he knew this would happen, but that he didn't have the tools to analyze just how bad it would be. Someone needs to tell this guy to stop designing superweapons instead of buildings.
I'm not sure that he should have made that admission, or if that's even a valid argument. I knew this was going to happen, but I didn't have the tools to analyze how bad it was going to be, so I did it anyway. Okay, sir.
Number 8. Lotus Riverside Disaster. The Lotus Riverside complex in Shanghai was an ambitious project which ended in complete disaster because of one simple mistake. The residential complex was comprised of 11 new high-rise apartment blocks, but at around 5 a.m. on the 27th of June 2009, one of the 13-story buildings suddenly collapsed, miraculously missing the surrounding blocks and avoiding a devastating domino effect. The incident killed one construction worker, but the fallout could have been much worse if the almost complete building had been occupied by its buyers. Investigations found that the freak accident was caused by non-compliance with construction standards and some seriously shoddy foundations. Earth beneath the building was excavated to make a 15-foot underground car park, and the soil had been piled up 32 feet on a nearby riverbank, which then burst under the pressure, sending water gushing beneath. These muddy foundations caused the building to topple over in a southerly direction, but simply moving the earth elsewhere could have prevented the whole ordeal. This massive oversight caused a number of project investors to withdraw and request their money back, and the company suffered total economic losses of up to $30 million, including construction costs and compensation to the would-be homeowners of the $2,100 per square meter apartments. Number 7.
We're about 4.5 minutes in, and I was actually slightly mistaken about what this video was going to be about when I read the title. It's entitled Most Expensive Mistakes in All History. I was expecting that we go further back in history, but I suppose it does make sense because we have the ability to document our mistakes now more than ever. I'm also wondering how much it cost to build the first skyscrapers with today's inflation adjusted prices. I'm not even too sure when the first skyscrapers were built, in the late 1800s or early 1900s. I'm not sure. I'll look it up, but if you know, please let me know. I'll also try to find some information on that after this and link whatever articles I find in the description.
Baltic Disaster. In 1980, a drilling exhibition commissioned by Texaco triggered a cataclysmic series of events which turned an 11-foot deep freshwater body of water in Louisiana known as Lake Peigneur into a 1,300-foot deep saltwater lake. On November 20th, a $5 million oil rig owned by drilling contractor Wilson Brothers accidentally damaged the dome of the underground diamond crystal salt mine, following a miscalculation by Texaco regarding their exact location. Around 13 billion liters of water were drained from the lake, washing salt, soil, and water into an immersible and ever-widening hole which created a powerful vortex sucking in the drilling platform, 11 barges, a tugboat, 65 acres of surrounding terrain, and even a small island in the center of the lake. The ensuing chaos destroyed most evidence of the accident, as air escaping from the mine caused 400-foot geysers, and the Delcombre Canal reversed direction to flow into the whirlpool. Miraculously, no one was killed, but the real casualty was Texaco's pride and their wallet, as the company paid $32 million to Diamond Crystal Salt Mine and $12.8 million to a nearby plant nursery, making Lake Peigneur perhaps the most expensive man-made lake in history, setting Texaco and Wilson Brothers back over the equivalent of $140 million today. Number 6. The Baltic Ace. Catastrophic mistakes can happen anywhere, as proven by the Baltic Ace carrier ship, which sank in just 15 minutes in the North Sea on December 5, 2012. The 23,500-ton ship was lost 65 kilometers off the Dutch coast after colliding with Cyprian container ship the Corvus J, killing 11 of its 24 crew members and sinking over 1,400 new Mitsubishi cars which were being transported from Japan and Tokyo to Russia. The wreck ended up almost 100 feet.
I'm going to guess this one will come out quite expensive, just gauging from the cars.
Deep in one of the world's busiest shipping lanes, hindering a safe passage for marine traffic and risking the release of dangerous substances into the environment. In March 2014, the company Reichswaterstaat commissioned partners Boskalis and Memot Salvage to remove the wreckage, which began by extracting its 540,000 remaining liters of oil. More than 18 ships and 150 people then took part in a huge operation to remove the sunken vessel, which could only be achieved by lifting the irreparably damaged wreck in chunks. Starting in April 2015, the ship was cut into 8 sections with wire and brought to the surface in pieces. Look at just how huge it was. Here's the bow, with all the cars inside ruined. Dutch police were unable to investigate the accident itself as it occurred outside of their territorial waters, but the mistake has since been speculated as a result of pure human error, as neither ship followed collision regulations. The mammoth salvage operation alone cost 67 million euros, the equivalent of around $75 million today. Add that to the cost of the Baltic Ace and the cost to repair the Corvus J, as well as the cargo they were carrying, and the driving error cost around $150 million in total. Number 5. Mars Climate Orbiter. In September 1999, NASA's 638-kilogram robotic space probe, the Mars Climate Orbiter, burned up and broke into pieces as it neared its destination after 10 long months of traveling. The orbiter was designed to examine the climate of the Martian planet, but the reason for its failure to even touch ground lays entirely with the people who sent it into space to begin with. The navigation team at Jet Propulsion Lab had used metric units measuring in millimeters and meters to indicate the planned altitude of the spacecraft, while Lockheed Martin Astronautics in Denver, Colorado used imperial measurements in inches and feet, and crucially failed to recognize that the measurements required conversion. As a result, the trajectory of the climate orbiter is estimated to have been dangerously within 57 kilometers of the planet's surface, where it skipped violently upon entry and was immediately destroyed. This huge discrepancy was responsible for the failure of the entire mission, and the mission, worth just over $328 million in 1999, was lost forever. Adjusted for inflation, that's the equivalent of over $500 million. I guess it pays to stick to one measurement system. Number 4.
Yes.
The S.
How many people do you think were in that chain of command who made the same mistake? I'm also surprised that at that level, using the metric system isn't just a default, so you don't have to do those conversions. But what do I know? I'm not a rocket scientist.
81 Isaac Peril. Mistakes are easily made, and it's often too late to rectify the situation by the time someone notices. But that wasn't exactly the case with Spain's supposedly state-of-the-art submarine, the S-81 Isaac Peril. The submarine was commissioned in 2013 as part of a new quartet for the Spanish Navy. But there's just one problem with its modern design. Once it's submerged, the Isaac Peril may never be able to resurface again. This is because a miraculously unnoticed flaw in its design means that the ship is around 75 to 100 tons overweight, which means Spain is essentially invested in a submarine which can only move in one direction: down. The mistake is said to have been a result of a pesky decimal point placed in the wrong place during calculations, and it's a single dot which could cost an extra $9.7 million per meter of the hull, which has to be extended to regain its balance. Considering $680 million has already been invested in this single ship as part of a total $3 billion for all 4 subs, this is hardly a screw-up which can be brushed under the rug. Although the S-81 is now estimated to join the Spanish fleet in 2020, it's unclear whether it'll ever see the light of day. Literally. Number 3. Berlin Brandenburg Airport.
You know sunken cost fallacy? Like someone who's buying lottery tickets twice a week for, let's say, 3 years, and then they add up how much they've spent on lottery tickets over the past 3 years and realize that it's a small fortune. So instead of course correcting and stopping to buy lottery tickets, they continue on with the same strategy, but now with more vigor because they hope that they're going to regain the money that they've spent. Some of these remind me of sunken cost fallacy.
Berlin Brandenburg Airport, designed and built to mark Germany's reunification after the fall of the Berlin Wall, is set to be the 3rd busiest in Germany and one of the 15 busiest in Europe. It's fitted with modern terminals, bold structures, and even a working railway station. But not a single passenger has ever passed through its gates. The multi-billion-dollar airport was supposed to open in 2012, but all you'll find there nowadays are operating baggage tracks with no bags and a single ghost train kept running to encourage airflow. But why? The global financial crisis of 2007 and 2008 reduced chances of contractor and investor involvement, so various politicians pitched in using public money with conflicting ideas. At one point, the capacity inside the terminal building was doubled after construction had already began, and after the airport company realized the designer had not accounted for any shopping, whole new retail floors were ordered. After such setbacks, invitations for the grand opening were sent out in 2012, but the ceremony was canceled after the entire fire prevention system was found to be inoperable. A re-evaluation of the airport by officials discovered 550,000 faults which needed fixing before it could be considered for use, from incorrect light bulbs to entire cable systems installed wrong. With millions spent each month to maintain the disused building, the airport has now cost upwards of $6.5 billion, over 3 times its original budget. Number 2. The Vasa. This monument.
This video is a few years old, Let me know if that airport's open now.
Mistake dates back to
I hope so.
1624, when the Swedish king ordered one of the most spectacular warships the world has ever seen. The Vasa, a new flagship of the Swedish Navy, was unveiled on the 10th of August, 1628. But to the horror of thousands of excited onlookers, it barely left Stockholm's bay before it sank 105 feet below the surface. With the first gust of wind, the warship immediately capsized, humiliating the king, who blamed the long-dead designer Henrik Hybertsen for its failures. In the king's currency, the ship cost more than 200,000 Rex dollars to build, which amounted to over 5% of Sweden's gross national product for the year. In other words, 1/20th of the nation's annual income suddenly lay at the bottom of the Stockholm harbor. If the equivalent percentage of Sweden's GNP was spent on a single ship today, that would equal $25.6 billion. Lengthy recovery of the Vasa began in 1956 and continued until 1990, when the restored 17th century ship was displayed in the Vasa Museum in 98% of its original glory. Although official salvage costs were unrecorded and partly funded by the Navy, modern estimates for the recovery of a ship of its size are between 55 and 110 million. And the worst part is that archaeological examination suggests that poor design was in fact to blame, as the gun deck was far too heavy. Number 1. Sale of Alaska. If you're selling something, you should probably be 100% sure that there's no value left in it for you first. And the sale of Alaska should be enough to prove it. Alaska was originally owned by Russia and had been a fairly lucrative source for fur as well as tea and ice. But in 1867, the Russian Emperor Alexander II no longer saw any profit in keeping the territory. Harsh weather conditions made it hard to farm, and its distance meant it was hard to protect from invasion. So Russia settled an agreement to sell the region to the US for $7.2 million. At first, the Americans thought nothing of Alaska either, until in 1896, when a major gold deposit was discovered in the Yukon, signaling its true potential as a gateway to a plethora of natural resources like oil and gold. As the ratio of the Russian ruble to the dollar was almost equal back then, not much profit was gained from the sale, but the US has earned its share back 100 times over. Economists now estimate the value of its oil and gas reserves alone to be worth around $200 billion, meaning this is one mistake which definitely has the Russian emperor turning in his grave. So what's the most expensive mistake you've ever made, and how does it compare? Which one of these terrible expensive mistakes made you facepalm the hardest? Let me know in the comments, and thanks for watching.
Okay. I spoke too soon about how far back in history we were going to go. The last two interested me the most, for sure. And this was a good video to mix it up. It's from a channel called Be Amazed, all caps. I'll link it down in the bio for you. It looks like there's a part 2 to this, so if you liked it, maybe we can catch it in the future. If not, you can watch it yourself and maybe check out their channel, see if there's anything else that interests you. Although I did have a misconception of what the video was going to be about, I learned a lot from it because there were only 2 events that I was familiar with, the Walkie Scorchy and the last one, the sale of Alaska. So these were events with very high price tags. I've never made a mistake that cost me that much. Obviously, I don't have that much. Let me know your most expensive mistake, whether that cost you physical capital, emotional capital, what's the other one? Mental capital. If you can think of a book that has anything to do with the 10 that we've seen today, feel free to drop the title down below. Other than that, that's all from me. So thanks for watching with me, and I'll catch you in the next video.